Breaking news. Canada delivered a clear and direct message to the United States. It is time to secure your own water supplies. That plain, no nonsense declaration sent ripples of surprise and unease through the corridors of power in Washington. It was not empty rhetoric or diplomatic posturing. It was a serious and unmistakable warning. The statement underscored a fundamental truth. North America's shared freshwater resources cannot be reduced to just another item on a negotiation table. These waters represent a critical strategic asset, essential to the survival and stability of the continent. And now one side had made it clear that control over them would not be compromised. At the center of this unfolding moment stood Donald Trump. Opposite him, providing a firm and fact-based counterweight, was Mark Carney. Once the governor of the Bank of Canada, he had become a globally recognized figure in finance and policy. A Canadian leader with deep international influence, now positioned directly between the American president and the freshwater systems that sustain tens of millions of lives across borders. It took only a single phone call, one carefully measured warning, to shift the trajectory of events. What Trump appeared to view as a manageable resource, something akin to infrastructure that could be adjusted or redirected, Carney understood as a source of profound power. That power was anchored in geography, reinforced by legal frameworks, and protected by long-standing international agreements built over generations, ready to assert themselves when challenged. This situation did not begin in the Oval Office or in corporate boardrooms. Its roots stretch back to the invisible boundary that runs through the heart of North America. Canada possesses an extraordinary natural advantage. More than 2 million lakes in control, over roughly 18% of the world's accessible freshwater surface. That reality gives the country a quiet but decisive edge, one that previous American administrations largely overlooked or treated as a given, until Donald Trump turned his focus northward. Trump approached Canada's freshwater reserves with a mindset driven by immediate utility. The scale is undeniable. The Great Lakes, the Columbia River, and the St. Lawrence Seaway together hold nearly 20% of the world's surface freshwater. They sit visibly along the shared border, yet rather than viewing them as a jointly managed resource requiring careful stewardship, Trump saw them as leverage. In his framing, they resembled a tap that could simply be opened to address water shortages elsewhere. He even described it in those terms, suggesting that Canada's water could quickly solve drought conditions in places like California. Experts reacted quickly. Engineers noted the impracticality. Hydrologists expressed disbelief. There is no such mechanism. No valve exists that can simply be turned. No infrastructure has ever been built capable of moving water at the scale imagined. The physical geography of the continent makes such diversion extraordinarily difficult. But in Washington, where strategic ambition often overrides technical limitations, those barriers did not immediately dampen the discussion. That was when Mark Carney stepped in. Known widely as a respected central banker, he had long operated at the intersection of economics, law, and diplomacy. He understood that water is not just a resource. It is leverage in its most fundamental form. He also understood the legal architecture governing these waters. The Boundary Waters Treaty of 1909 and the Great Lakes Compact of 2008 are not flexible guidelines. They are binding agreements, shaped through decades of negotiation and designed specifically to prevent unilateral control or exploitation. Maintaining a calm and measured tone, Carney made the call. According to multiple sources familiar with the exchange, it marked a decisive turning point. The message was clear. Canada controls the headwaters. The United States does not. Any attempt to redirect water requires legal authorization, mutual agreement, and adherence to established frameworks. Trump's response was not immediate acceptance. It was surprise. The idea that a neighboring country with a smaller population could exert such control challenged his assumptions. In his worldview, resources could be negotiated, traded, or pressured into alignment. But water, particularly from an upstream position, operates differently. The Columbia River provides a clear example. It powers major hydroelectric facilities in the United States, supports agriculture worth billions, and sustains entire regional economies. Yet it originates in Canada. That upstream position translates into structural authority, not as a matter of preference, but as a function of geography and law. The timing made the situation even more significant. Wildfires were sweeping across California. Drought conditions were intensifying in the Southwest. Public pressure for solutions was mounting. Trump spoke confidently about delivering water, referencing the idea of expanding supply. But the physical and legal realities did not support those claims. Carney's position remained grounded in those realities. Water flows according to gravity. It is governed by geography, not by policy announcements. Canada's upstream position is not negotiable. What followed was not open confrontation, but a controlled demonstration of leverage. A recent example had already emerged in the energy sector. Ontario Premier Doug Ford had imposed targeted charges on electricity exports to several U.S. states, resulting in immediate cost increases for millions of American households. The principle was clear. Resource control can translate into direct influence. Freshwater represents an even more fundamental resource. Carney did not need to escalate publicly. The message itself was sufficient. It introduced hesitation into a system accustomed to rapid decision-making. Efforts within Washington continued. Officials explored technical possibilities, revisited historical proposals, and examined potential alternatives. But every idea encountered the same constraints. Geography, law, and infrastructure all aligned against large-scale diversion. These proposals were not new. Concepts such as the North American Water and Power Alliance and various diversion plans had been explored for decades. Each had failed due to cost, environmental concerns, legal barriers, and political resistance. Trump's approach echoed those earlier efforts but now faced an immediate and firm response. Carney's intervention drew a clear boundary. Canada's upstream control is not subject to negotiation under pressure. That reality reshaped the discussion instantly. This was more than a policy disagreement. It was a moment that highlighted the limits of influence. Advisors accustomed to flexibility encountered a fixed constraint. Natural laws and international agreements do not shift easily. The Great Lakes, the Columbia River, and the St. Lawrence Seaway all remain anchored within this framework. Their flow depends on upstream decisions. Attempts to exert pressure do not alter that structure. The Columbia River illustrates this point clearly. Originating in British Columbia, it supports dozens of hydroelectric facilities, irrigates farmland, and enables commercial transportation. Every drop begins in Canada. Trump approached it as a negotiable asset. Carney recognized it as a strategic foundation. Control at the source determines control throughout the system. Within Washington, discussions turned to alternatives. Pipelines, diversions, diplomatic pressure. Yet each proposal returned to the same reality. The river begins in Canada. The governing agreements reinforce that reality. The Columbia River Treaty was designed to balance energy, flood control, and environmental considerations. It emerged from years of negotiation. The Boundary Waters Treaty and the Great Lakes Compact reflect similar depth and durability. These frameworks are not optional. They are embedded in law and supported by precedent. Attempts to bypass them encounter immediate resistance. The implications were immediate. Regions facing water shortages continued searching for solutions. Political pressure remained high, but the structural constraints did not change. The Columbia River alone accounts for a substantial portion of hydroelectric power in the Pacific Northwest, supports billions in agricultural output, and maintains key transportation routes. Any attempt to alter its flow would affect millions of people and require overcoming immense barriers. The principle remains simple. Upstream control defines downstream outcomes. This principle had already been demonstrated in the energy sector. When Ontario adjusted electricity exports, the impact was immediate and measurable. Freshwater carries even greater significance. Carney's approach did not rely on public confrontation. It relied on clarity and precision. The message was delivered once, backed by law, geography, and precedent. For a leader accustomed to negotiation and leverage, this presented a different kind of challenge. Some systems cannot be adjusted through pressure. The broader reality is straightforward. A significant portion of the world's freshwater lies under Canadian control. The United States, by geography, remains downstream. Even within Trump's inner circle, the implications became clear. This was not a typical negotiation. It was a structural constraint defined by physical and legal realities. In that moment, a lasting lesson emerged. Canada holds the upstream position. Mark Carney articulated that reality with calm authority. And the concept of a simple faucet turned out to represent something far more significant, one of the most powerful forms of leverage on the continent.